My name is Zane Parker. I'm 34 years old, and the woman I spent 5 years building up just handed me divorce papers in a hospital parking lot. While I worked double shifts to pay her tuition, she was building a future with someone else. But when she called me her stepping stone, I signed without a word and disappeared. 3 years later, karma found her in ways she never imagined. Before I tell you how everything unfolded, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and please subscribe because the story will show you that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving forward. The morning of Jessica's graduation felt like the finish line of a marathon. I woke up at 5, ironed my best shirt, and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. 5 years of sacrifice had carved lines into my face that weren't there before. Dark circles, graying temples at 31, hands rough from construction work. But today was worth it. Today, my wife would finally become a registered nurse. I'd supported her through every exam, every clinical rotation, every moment of doubt. We'd done it together, or so I thought. I remembered the day she told me she wanted to go back to school. We were sitting in our tiny apartment, bills spread across the kitchen table. "I want to be a nurse," she said, her eyes bright with hope. "I want to help people." I didn't hesitate. "Then we'll make it happen." I took on extra shifts at the construction site, worked weekends, skipped meals to stretch our budget. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in our future. The graduation ceremony was held at the Civic Center downtown. Families crowded the auditorium, holding flowers and cameras. I found a seat near the back, not wanting to block anyone's view. Jessica looked beautiful in her white nursing uniform and cap, standing with her classmates. When the dean called her name, I clapped harder than anyone else in that room. My hands stung, but I didn't care. This was our moment. She walked across the stage, accepted her certificate, and for a split second, her eyes found mine. But she didn't smile. She just looked away. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. She was probably overwhelmed, I told myself. Emotional. After the ceremony ended, graduates poured into the parking lot, hugging families and taking photos. I waited by our old sedan with a bouquet of roses, rehearsing what I'd say, how proud I was, how everything would be easier now. Jessica approached slowly, her nursing uniform crisp in the afternoon sun. She wasn't smiling. Behind her, I noticed a man I'd never seen before, tall and polished in an expensive suit. He hung back near a luxury car, watching us. "Zane," she said, her voice flat. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked, already feeling the ground shift beneath me. "Divorce papers," she said, like she was reading from a grocery list. "I've already signed. You just need to add yours." The parking lot sounds faded. Car doors slamming, laughter, children playing. All of it became distant white noise. "You're joking," I managed to say. She shook her head. "I'm serious. I don't need you anymore, Zane. I have my degree, my certification, job offers. You were helpful during school, but that chapter's closed." Helpful. The word echoed in my head like a gunshot. 5 years reduced to a single adjective. I stared at the envelope in my hands, then at the woman I'd married 7 years ago. So that's what I was? Helpful. She shifted her weight, glancing back at the man by the luxury car. "You knew my career came first. I told you that from the beginning. Now I can finally live my life." Around us, her classmates were celebrating, oblivious to the demolition happening in front of them. A few recognized me, the husband who'd brought coffee during study sessions, who'd paid tuition bills while working himself to exhaustion. They whispered, phones out, capturing the scene. "Who's that?" I asked, nodding toward the man in the suit. Jessica's jaw tightened. "That's Gavin. He's a physician at Memorial Hospital. We've been seeing each other for 8 months. 8 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. All those late study sessions she'd claimed. All those extra clinical hours. She'd been building a new life while I held up the old one. "You've been cheating on me?" My voice came out hollow. "Don't make this dramatic," Jessica said, her tone ice cold. "You and I were practical. Gavin and I are compatible. He understands my career in ways you never could. She gestured at the papers. Just sign them. I'm not asking for alimony or anything complicated. We split what little we have and we both move on. The roses in my hand felt absurdly heavy. I'd spent $20 on them. Money I'd scraped together from lunch breaks I'd skipped. Now they seemed like props in someone else's tragedy. Gavin started walking toward us, his expensive shoes clicking on the asphalt. He was everything I wasn't. Polished, educated, the kind of man who belonged in Jessica's new world. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his hand possessively finding Jessica's waist. I looked at my wife, searching for any trace of the woman who'd promised to build a life with me. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who saw people as stepping stones. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Everything's fine." I pulled a pen from my jacket pocket. Jessica's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across her face. She'd expected resistance, drama, maybe even begging. Instead, I flipped through the pages, scanning the legal language that carved up our marriage. She'd already decided everything. Who got the apartment, how we'd split our savings, even which car belonged to whom. It was thorough, calculated. She'd been planning this for months. I signed each page with steady strokes, my hand not shaking once. When I finished, I handed the folder back to her. "Congratulations on your graduation," I said. "And your divorce." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Behind her, Gavin smirked, satisfied. The crowd of graduates and families had formed a loose circle around us, some recording on phones, others whispering. Jessica's face flushed red. She'd wanted a scene, something she could use to justify her choices later. My calm acceptance robbed her of that. "That's it?" she asked. "You're not going to fight?" I shook my head. Why would I fight for someone who just called me a stepping stone? I turned and walked away, leaving the roses on the hood of the car. Behind me, I heard confused murmurs from the crowd. Someone asked, "Who was that guy?" Someone else answered, "Her husband, I think. He paid for everything." The words followed me across the parking lot, but I didn't look back. 5 years of my life had just ended in a conversation that lasted less than 10 minutes. By the time I reached the bus stop, my phone was already buzzing with texts. Our joint bank account had been emptied except for my half. Jessica had been efficient. That night, I sat in our apartment. My apartment now, surrounded by boxes I'd already started packing. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I felt nothing, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that made me human. I canceled the joint accounts, removed my name from shared bills, disconnected the utilities she'd need. Every action was methodical, mechanical. By midnight, the digital ties between us were severed. I wasn't running away. I was simply erasing myself from her story. 3 days later, I loaded the last box into my truck. The apartment looked empty, haunted by the ghost of a marriage that had died long before I realized it. I'd found a small place across town, nothing fancy, but it was mine. No shared memories, no reminders of wasted years. Before I left, I stood in the doorway one last time. This was where Jessica had studied for her entrance exams while I worked nights, where I'd held her when she cried after failing her first clinical evaluation, where I'd believed we were building something together. The new apartment was a blank slate. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a view of a parking lot. It was perfect. I didn't want comfort. I wanted emptiness, space to figure out who Zane Parker was without being someone's support system. My boss at the construction company had been understanding when I'd requested time off. "Take what you need," he'd said, seeing something broken in my face. But I didn't need time off. I needed work, something physical to exhaust me so thoroughly I couldn't think. The first month was survival. I worked 12-hour days, came home too tired to do anything but collapse into bed. I didn't call anyone, didn't tell friends or family what had happened. I existed in a gray space between the person I'd been and whoever I was becoming. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text Jessica about something small, something funny I'd seen. Then I'd remember. She wasn't mine to text anymore. She'd never really been mine at all. I ran into an old coworker named Henry at a coffee shop one morning. He took one look at me and sat down uninvited. "You look terrible," he said bluntly. "Divorce?" I replied, the word still foreign in my mouth. Henry nodded slowly. "Jessica finally did it, huh?" I stared at him. "You knew?" He shrugged. "Man, everyone knew she was seeing that doctor. We just didn't want to be the ones to tell you. Figured you'd find out eventually." The betrayal doubled. Not just Jessica, but everyone around us had known, and nobody had said a word. "How long?" I asked, my voice tight. Henry looked uncomfortable. "At least a year, maybe longer." She'd meet him after classes, during breaks. Some of the guys on the crew saw them together at restaurants downtown. A year. She'd been living a double life while I'd worked myself to exhaustion paying her bills. "Why didn't you tell me?" Henry met my eyes. "Would you have believed me? You were so convinced she loved you, that you were building something together. Sometimes people need to see the truth themselves." He wasn't wrong. If someone had told me a year ago that Jessica was cheating, I would have defended her, made excuses. Love makes you blind. Or maybe it just makes you stupid. "What are you going to do now?" Henry asked. I shrugged. "Keep working. Keep moving forward." He studied me for a long moment. "You know, my cousin runs a construction company in Denver. They're always looking for experienced foremen. Better pay, fresh start, no memories." The idea planted itself in my mind like a seed. 2 weeks later, I was in Denver. The decision happened fast, almost impulsively. I sold what little furniture I had, packed my truck, and drove west until the city skyline appeared in my rearview mirror. Henry's cousin, a gruff man named Tom, hired me on the spot. "Henry says you're reliable," Tom said, shaking my hand. "That's all I need to know." The work was hard, but it was honest. We built office complexes and apartment buildings, structures that would stand long after we were gone. There was something healing in that, in creating things that lasted. Denver was different from home. The air was thinner, the mountains visible in the distance. Nobody knew me here. I wasn't the guy whose wife had left him on graduation day. I was just Zane, the new foreman who showed up early and stayed late. I found a small apartment near the work site, bought basic furniture from a thrift store, and started building a life that didn't revolve around anyone else's dreams. For the first time in years, my mornings belonged to me. I started running in the evenings, something I'd never had time for before. The physical exhaustion felt different from work exhaustion. It was cleansing, purposeful. I'd run until my lungs burned and my legs trembled, until the only thing in my head was the rhythm of my feet hitting pavement. 6 months passed. Then a year. I didn't track Jessica on social media, didn't ask mutual friends about her. She'd become a closed chapter, a lesson learned. Henry called occasionally to check on me. "You sound better," he said one evening. "I feel better," I replied, surprised to realize it was true. The anger had faded, replaced by something quieter. Not quite peace, but acceptance. Jessica had shown me who she was, and I'd finally listened. That was valuable in its own painful way. I started taking night classes at a community college, studying project management. If I was going to build things, I wanted to understand the bigger picture, the engineering and design behind the structures. Tom noticed my initiative. "Keep this up," he said, "and I'll make you a project manager within 2 years." One Saturday morning, I was at a hardware store when I saw her. Not Jessica, but someone who reminded me why I'd left. She was struggling with a heavy bag of concrete, and I instinctively offered to help. "Thank you," she said, smiling. Her name was Carla. She was a landscape architect, designing the outdoor spaces for a new residential development. We talked for 20 minutes in the parking lot, an easy conversation about work and Denver's unpredictable weather. Before I left, she handed me her card. "If you ever need landscape work, call me," she said. But her eyes suggested she meant something more. I didn't call for 2 weeks. The idea of dating, of trusting someone new, felt impossible. But finally, curiosity won. We met for coffee, then dinner, then a hike in the foothills. Carla was different from Jessica in every way. She was independent, confident, someone who'd built her own success without using anyone as a ladder. She never asked me to fix her problems or fund her dreams. She just wanted company, partnership, equality. It was foreign and wonderful. "What happened to you?" Carla asked one evening as we sat on her balcony watching the sunset. "You have this wall around you. I can feel it." I'd avoided talking about Jessica, but Carla deserved honesty. So I told her everything. The 5 years of sacrifice, the parking lot divorce, the discovery that I'd been funding someone else's affair. Carla listened without interrupting, her hand finding mine. "I'm sorry that happened to you," she said when I finished. "But I'm glad you didn't let it destroy you." "I thought about it," I admitted. "There were days I wanted to just disappear completely." She squeezed my hand. "But you didn't. You rebuilt yourself. That takes real strength." For the first time since Jessica had handed me those papers, I felt something crack open inside me. Not pain, but possibility. Maybe I could trust again. Maybe not everyone was looking for someone to use. Carla represented everything Jessica hadn't been. Honest, direct, someone who saw relationships as partnerships instead of transactions. We took things slow, both of us cautious with our hearts. 2 years after leaving my old life, I got a message from an unknown number. "Zane, this is Jessica. We need to talk. It's important." I stared at the text for a long time, my thumb hovering over the delete button. But curiosity won. "What about?" I replied. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, "I made a mistake. Can we meet?" I showed Carla the message. She read it, her expression neutral. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to know what happened. Part of me doesn't care anymore." Carla nodded. "Then maybe you should find out. Not for her, but for closure. So you can put that chapter to rest completely." She was right. 2 days later, I drove back to my old city, my stomach tight with apprehension. Jessica had suggested we meet at a coffee shop near the hospital where she worked. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight, her face drawn and tired. The confident woman from graduation day was gone, replaced by someone who looked defeated. "Zane," she said, standing. "Thank you for coming." We sat across from each other, an awkward silence stretching between us. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "You look good," she finally said. "Different." "I am different," I replied. "What did you want to talk about?" She took a deep breath. "I need to explain what happened. I need you to understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "You used me to fund your education, then left when you didn't need me anymore. What else is there to explain?" Her eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't like that. I was confused, overwhelmed. Gavin promised me things, a lifestyle I'd never had. And how did that work out?" I asked, already knowing the answer from her appearance. She looked down at her coffee. "He left me 6 months ago. Turns out he was married the whole time. His wife found out about us and he chose her. I lost everything. The apartment, the car he'd bought me, the life I thought we were building. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication, but I just felt empty. Why are you telling me this?" She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Because I was wrong. About everything. You were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away for someone who never really loved me." "You're right," I said quietly. "You threw it away." She pulled her hand back. "Can't we try again? Start over? I know I hurt you, but people make mistakes." I thought about the last 2 years. The work I'd done rebuilding myself. The life I'd created in Denver. Carla's steady presence in my world. Jessica represented everything I'd left behind. The pain, the betrayal, the version of myself who'd measured his worth by how much he could sacrifice. "No," I said firmly. "We can't." Her face crumpled. "Why not?" "I'm sorry, Zane. I'm truly sorry." "I believe you're sorry," I replied. "But you're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry your plan didn't work out. You're sorry Gavin left you. If he'd stayed, we wouldn't be having this conversation." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. We both knew I was right. I've moved on, Jessica. I have a good life now, a life I built for myself. I'm not interested in being anyone's backup plan. I stood up, leaving money on the table for my untouched coffee. I hope you find what you're looking for, but you won't find it with me. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt lighter. The ghost of Jessica that had haunted me for 2 years finally dissipated. She'd wanted forgiveness, or maybe just absolution for her guilt. But I didn't owe her either. The drive back to Denver felt different, like I was leaving behind the last remnants of who I used to be. When I got home, Carla was waiting at my apartment with takeout and a smile. "How did it go?" she asked. Pulled her into a hug. It went exactly how it needed to. That night, we talked about the future. Carla had been offered a major project designing the outdoor spaces for a new corporate campus. "It's a huge opportunity," she said, excitement lighting her eyes. "But it means I'll be traveling a lot over the next year." "That's amazing," I said, meaning it. "You've worked so hard for this." She studied my face. "You're not worried?" "About the distance." I shook my head. "We'll make it work. I trust you." The words came easily because they were true. Carla had never given me a reason to doubt her, and I'd learned the difference between healthy trust and blind faith. Tom promoted me to project manager the following month. The raise was substantial, enough that I could finally start saving seriously. I bought a small house on the outskirts of Denver, nothing fancy, but it was mine. No mortgage tied to someone else's dreams. No shared accounts that could be emptied overnight. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, was an act of building something that couldn't be taken away. Carla helped me move in, and we spent a weekend transforming the empty space into a home. She had an eye for design, suggesting colors and layouts that made the small house feel spacious and welcoming. "You've really done it," she said, surveying the living room we just finished arranging. "Done what?" I asked. "Built a whole new life. Most people talk about starting over, but you actually did it." I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago, standing in that parking lot with wilted roses and a broken heart. He felt like a different person, someone I barely recognized. "I didn't have a choice," I said. "It was either rebuild or stay broken." Carla wrapped her arms around me. "Everyone has a choice. You chose growth." 3 years had become 5 since that parking lot divorce. I was 34 now, running a successful construction company, married to someone who loved me as an equal, raising a daughter who would never doubt her worth. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the younger version of myself who'd stood in that parking lot clutching wilted roses. I wished I could tell him that the pain wouldn't last forever, that something better was coming. But maybe he needed to walk through that fire to become who I was now. Jessica had taught me what I wouldn't accept, and that lesson, however brutal, had been invaluable. I never heard from Jessica again after that coffee shop meeting. Henry mentioned seeing her occasionally, always with the same haunted look of someone who'd realized too late what they'd lost. I felt nothing when he told me this. No satisfaction, no pity, just indifference. She was a stranger now, someone from a past life I'd outgrown. My story wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about resilience, about learning that your worth isn't determined by who chooses to stay or leave. Sometimes the people we lift highest forget who held them up. But that says everything about them and nothing about us. I'd been called a stepping stone once. Now I was a foundation, solid, unshakable, built to last. Carla and I got engaged on a quiet Tuesday evening. There was no elaborate proposal, no grand gesture. We were cooking dinner together, working in easy synchronization, and I just knew. "Marry me," I said, the words simple and true. She turned from the stove, surprised. "What? Marry me?" I repeated. "Not because I need you to complete me, but because I want to build a life with you, as equals." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. "Yes." We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a mountain lodge outside Denver. Tom and Henry flew in, along with Carla's family and our closest friends. The ceremony was nothing like my first wedding. There was no stress, no debt accumulated for appearances, No feeling that I was performing for someone else's benefit. It was genuine, intimate, a celebration of two people who'd found each other after learning hard lessons about what love shouldn't be. As Carla and I exchanged vows, I thought briefly about Jessica, not with anger or sadness, but with gratitude. Her betrayal had freed me to find something better, to become someone better. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually a gift in disguise. We honeymooned in Costa Rica, a week of beach walks and jungle hikes. One evening, sitting on our balcony watching the sunset, Carla asked, "Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if Jessica hadn't left?" I considered the question. Sometimes, but mostly I'm grateful things happened the way they did. Really? She seemed surprised. You went through hell. I did, I agreed. But that hell taught me what I actually wanted. If Jessica had stayed, I'd still be that person who measured my worth by how much I could sacrifice. Now I know my worth isn't determined by what I give up for someone else. Carla leaned against my shoulder. I'm grateful too, for my own painful lessons that led me here. We'd both been through relationships that taught us what we didn't want, and those experiences had made us appreciate what we'd found. The rest of the week passed in peaceful contentment. No drama or crisis. Just two people enjoying each other's company. It was everything my first marriage hadn't been. Easy, balanced, built on mutual respect rather than dependency. When we returned to Denver, reality welcomed us back gently. Our house, our jobs, our life together. A year into our marriage, Carla got pregnant. The news filled me with a joy I hadn't expected, tinged with fear. What if I messed this up? I asked her one night. What if I'm not a good father? She took my hand, placing it on her growing belly. You'll be amazing. You know how to build things that last. You've proven that with your own life. The pregnancy was smooth, and when our daughter Emma was born, I held her tiny body and made a silent promise. I would teach her to value herself, to never settle for being someone's stepping stone. Emma changed everything. Suddenly, work wasn't just about building structures. It was about creating a future for her. Carla and I adapted to parenthood with the same partnership we'd brought to everything else. We split responsibilities, supported each other through sleepless nights, celebrated every small milestone. One evening, as I rocked Emma to sleep, Carla showed me her phone. Jessica tried to add me on social media, she said. What should I do? I looked at our daughter's peaceful face. Block her. That chapter's closed. Emma turned 2, and we threw a small party in our backyard. Friends from work came, Carla's family, the community we'd built in Denver. Watching everyone celebrate, I realized I'd accomplished something I'd never thought possible. I was genuinely happy. Not the performative happiness of my first marriage, but deep, authentic contentment. Tom pulled me aside during the party. I'm retiring next year, he said. I want you to take over the company. The offer was unexpected and overwhelming. Are you sure? He nodded. You've earned it. You're the best manager I've ever had. That night, after everyone left and Emma was asleep, Carla and I sat in the backyard. Tom offered me the company, I told her. Her eyes widened. Zane, that's incredible. It means longer hours, more responsibility, I warned. We'll figure it out, she said confidently. We always do. I pulled her close, grateful for the 1,000th time that I'd found someone who saw challenges as things to overcome together, not obstacles to resent. I never thought I'd get here, I admitted. After Jessica, I thought maybe I just wasn't meant for this kind of happiness. 3 years had become 5 since that parking lot divorce. I was 34 now, running a successful construction company, married to someone who loved me as an equal, raising a daughter who would never doubt her worth. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the younger version of myself who'd stood in that parking lot clutching wilted roses. I wished I could tell him that the pain wouldn't last forever, that something better was coming. But maybe he needed to walk through that fire to become who I was now. Jessica had taught me what I wouldn't accept, and that lesson, however brutal, had been invaluable. I never heard from Jessica again after that coffee shop meeting. Henry mentioned seeing her occasionally, always with the same haunted look of someone who'd realized too late what they'd lost. I felt nothing when he told me this. No satisfaction, no pity, just indifference. She was a stranger now, someone from a past life I'd outgrown. My story wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about resilience, about learning that your worth isn't determined by who chooses to stay or leave. Sometimes the people we lift highest forget who held them up. But that says everything about them and nothing about us. I'd been called a stepping stone once. Now I was a foundation, solid, unshakable, built to last.